Hello everyone, and welcome back to A Township Tale. Sorry, I had to make sure that my stuff was all set up properly. Today I was thinking about some of the stuff that we may have not seen before, and some of the things that this game doesn't really show you to start off with, and I'm pretty sure I think there's a couple of episodes that are out like that, but I felt like I haven't seen anything of the sort, personally, but I figured it might come in pretty helpful hands if you ever need it. So we're going to be taking a look at some of the stuff around here, stuff that you didn't know, some of the things that you should expect when you start playing the game, or if you are new, or if you've been here for a while, maybe just something that you've never seen before. So that is what we're going to be taking a look into today. So let's go ahead and get this started. Okay, so I guess as a starter, I'm sure that many of you mates have seen these. This is called a heat core. So a heat core is basically one of the items that you get after completing the first trial. And luckily it doesn't create any fire, but we genuinely call these heat cores. Because they can actually be used for cooking purposes. So I'm not sure on the limitations of a heat core, but if you just had a grass and a heat core next to it and lit it, the grass would not burn out and it doesn't consume like you would with cooking with fire. Now I know it looks strange because with the wood it looks more natural, but if you're looking to do some cooking while you're playing this game, definitely most recommended that you have one of these on you. And you typically get around 2 to 5, I think. 2 to 5 when you're doing the first trial. So that's tip number 1 for you. Another tip is wood cutting. So technically when you're in here, you kind of get an understanding when you first play the game that you need a chisel and hammer. Typically one of this size. So typically these sizes are better to use because, well, yeah, it's smaller, so it doesn't come and do too much damage to the pieces when you're chipping them off. And then also, sometimes the best way to do this when you don't have a chisel yet is just a cup of flint. Flint is pretty easy to come by, even though people do collect it, and sometimes you might not need it in a moment, so you forget to grab it. But it's a pretty easy hit like that, and it actually works. But there is a better way compared to doing the flint and flint option, which is technically good for basically everything. So I do recommend you always keep 2 or more flint on you at all times. But you can use ingots and hammers. They actually do count, and you can get the pieces chipped off pretty well. And as you can probably see, it chips off pretty naturally, but the reason why you should use ingots for when you're making carpentry stuff is for higher level woods, such as ash wood, redwood, walnut, and everything like that. Doing it with 2 flint is not going to be easy. It's going to take some time to do. But if you have a ingot that has a pretty high damage rate, damage capability, similar to like how mithril is, and how it is very close to Valiant in damage, and has a higher durability than Valiant, it's definitely recommended that you use any ingot above basically red iron. Red iron's a good standard for a oak tree if you want to get the pieces off pretty good, but anything that is a little stronger than oak wood, recommend going up in ingot types for hammers. But of course, making a hammer is not that hard to do. Speaking of which, hammers such as these are typically good for almost everything that you have to do to craft. As you can see, like knowing the level of stuff that I have, such as mithril stuff, I still have a copper hammer. And that's because copper hammers are actually the best ones to use for crafting. They don't do too much damage, and they are doing enough damage to the item so that you can get the nails in properly. The typical one that you should go with if you're starting out is a gold hammer, because a gold hammer is a softer metal. It is heavier, but is softer. So that means the hits that you do, say if you were doing them the same level of hits, same speed and everything like that, gold hammers are softer, meaning that the hits are going to take more because there's not enough force going into it. Which brings up the better option, which is copper and iron. These two types of metals are really good for crafting because they will get the nails through as quickly as possible, as well as they don't weigh too much. They don't weigh as much as gold, and they do better damage than that. Any hammer above that, such as mithril or viridium or electrum or valium, will likely destroy the item you're trying to build if you try to craft with that. So stick to the base level hammers with this. And also, if you ever do plan on making a lantern, which I don't think I have on me right now, not a lantern, a flashlight. Flashlights typically have a part of the build where the nail is at the direct bottom of the thing. So sometimes people will make rock clubs, rock hammers, so that they can hit the bottoms, but they don't work too well. And be wary when building that, because even with a hammer like this, it's still pretty dangerous to do. So yeah, that's it for the hammers. Right, another tip when you're starting out. So you want to become an archer. So one of the typical things is that you usually find arrows around, typically the rusty blue and white ones. You'll find the rusty tipped arrows that only have a feather end with blue and white ends. Or you will find the Hebios arrows, which are a higher leveled item, but they're not very good depending on the bow they use. But you can make your own arrows. You want to get feathers and cut them up, and you'll probably notice that there is a blue and a red one. It's up to you whether you choose the blue or the red pill, you know the story. But actually these do have an effect on your arrows when you make stuff. It's not purely cosmetic, such as an outfit. But blue arrows are typically lighter. Blue feathers typically will have a lighter effect on your arrows. So if you are starting off arrows making something like silver or anything lighter than silver with a blue feather at the end, the arrow is not going to be very accurate. But with red arrows, red feather tails, this has a more balancing system to any lower level arrow, because they give an equal amount of weight so that it's stable. I have shot a few arrows before on a previous server, and if you ever follow the trails, if you ever check them out when you get the effects, when you start leveling up your skills, they will leave a very distinct whirly trail with the blue ones, but the red ones are more swirly but are more accurate. But it also depends on the metal they use for the arrow tips. So typically for heavier stuff you want to use blue arrows instead of red ones. Some of you may already know about these, but these are Terrabotta eyes, which are things that they might drop when you are fighting them. So they would drop ores, rocks, as well as these. So the first time I saw one of these, I didn't know what it was. I thought it was an interesting gem that you could possibly sell. I mean, you could sell it if you want to, but you're probably not going to get a lot of profit for it. But these are technically explosives. Whoa. Little key point, extra tip in here. If you ever want something to actually make a full impact, if it doesn't explode, go press your sprint button and then throw it. But stop in your tracks, don't keep moving with it. So as soon as you throw it, stop, because the momentum will build and then the throw will go further. But also simultaneously, just in case you don't want to keep throwing rocks around, you can attach them to arrowheads. They count as arrowheads. So I did take one of the feathers that I was talking about before, and then you can actually attach it, and it makes an explosive arrow. This was one of my theories. I hadn't seen anybody actually use one of these yet. I just knew that they existed. Particularly the actual stones, I didn't think that I could actually stick it to the end of an arrow tip, or make it an arrow tip. But do note that shooting these arrows, they're typically more heavy, so they're not going to go as far as regular arrows, but it makes sense because you literally have a rock at the end of a stick. I believe you can put straw at the end of these as well. So basically it makes it like a fire arrow. You can shoot fire arrows generally on their own, and they'll do some stuff. But there we go, we got a burning explosive arrow. So if we do manage to find a bow somewhere, will be able to light this, fire it off in the distance, and it will explode somewhere. Also, another tip is one of these. So this is what you call a miner's bag. You can make them pretty easily out of either birch or you can either make them out of birch or oak wood. And they take one of the little mats that you'll find around. They're pretty easy to find, they're not very good. But typically this is a bag so that you have less weight when you're taking ores with you from the mine, or wherever you may be. I have learned that these are, they're okay. And you can get 3 pockets on the side, however way you would want to make it. Clearly this one has a weapons rack on it, so I think I made Nardo is the one who owns this one. This is just kind of an example, but this is typically not the greatest bag to have. There's actually a better way that you can make a mining bag, but make it better. Because some of the things that you might come across on the mines obviously are like metal parts. Actually exactly like metal parts. So the metal parts that you find, you won't be able to store them unless you put regular pockets on the sides where the mines are. Or where the mining bag is. Because the mining bag will only let you take ores and metals. That's it. But there is a better way. That way if you want to collect the metals yourself, as well as some of the parts such as huge pieces of the hammers that you want to smelt down, I'll show you what the bag looks like so you have a better grasp on it. So this is what you should have as a mining bag. A leather bag with 2 mining pockets. So basically what you would have is pouches actually carry double the amount than you could with a regular slot. So it's 136 gold ore that I can put in here. But you can also start collecting other ores and then they won't weigh you down as much. That's kind of the purpose of the pouches. But when you come across large chunks of metal, metal parts, you'll want to have enough space to be able to put them in. So this is the kind of the mining bag that you want to get. Now for anybody who actually plans on being a miner in the game, to go down in the mines, collect some ores, collect some metals, along with the bag that I showed you guys earlier, one of the things that you will get as a skill if you progress long enough is the echolocation. So echolocation will send a small signal of where you are to kind of give you a layout of the terrain for a brief second that it passes by. But I learned something recently about some of the things you could do with it. Echolocation is done with a pickaxe. So with a pickaxe you could slam it down and it will send a wave showing you what's around you. If you ever noticed, when you hold flint in the air, if you have air slash, it will give you the bubble, but you can't do anything with it, as you can see. So if you take a sword, such as my mithril one here, the slash goes through. But for some reason, flint will show itself and do the same thing. But of course you're not close enough to the bubble to be able to hit it, and simultaneously when you try to hit it, nothing happens. But what you can do is you can do echolocation with the flint. So if you're ever lost in the mines and you don't have a pickaxe, and you need to figure out where you are, you can use a simple piece of flint. Because remember, I told you in the beginning of this, always have 2 or more flint on you all the time, because you never know when you're going to need it. Flint appears to be one of the most useful metals, or well, not even a metal. It's one of the most useful things you can ever catch or get in the game, and you get it pretty early. So that's that tip for you. Here's another tip. Glowing mushrooms. Typically you want to have at least one of these on you when you're mining or if you're going anywhere. And also it is a recipe item that you can make. Only thing is, I don't recommend doing it. On the wiki it actually states that these will give you night vision. It's not true. It just emits a glow off of you, so that others can see you. You can't actually see anything any better. It's still dark, you go to the mines, you try to drink a potion like that, nothing's gonna happen. So that's a tip for you not to do. If you're out in the forest, I do recommend that you make yourself or find yourself a cauldron, because when you're out here you'll typically come across a few rivers and lakes and some wells, and when you take a cauldron out, you'll be able to get water from it. You can fall in the river if you want to. You'll technically get water out of it, and it'll just spawn you right back up, and you'll get yourself a cauldron full of water. But that's so that you can make stews when you're on the go. You could make food individually like this and eat it that way, but soups typically give you a good portion, as well as they keep your hunger for a longer amount of time. And speaking of cooking in the forest, brings me to another thing. Day's meat is a really good source for when you need to get a speed boost, which is basically an effect that happens when you eat the meat. There actually is a slight expansion in your teleport distance. Sometimes you could just eat them this small. They only give you a single bar when you eat one, and they take a little longer to eat compared to spriggle meat. Oh, but it looks like I have the effect. Also, depending on the stew that you make, will get you a longer distance. So typically, based on how you've seen my regular distance travel, you could see that my teleport speed is much further. So I'll be over here, and I can come back pretty quick. I believe the regular distance is about this much, but you can go further just a little bit more. So it's a pretty handy thing if you want to get day's meat out here in the forest. But I also say that's a pretty good amount of tips. If you guys have any questions about some of the things that maybe I didn't cover, or if you want to know any specifics, maybe if you're looking for a specific build, do let me know. And I'll absolutely be able to see who else is like an expert in that, because I'm typically more of the combatant and the mining type. So if you're looking to do some axe cutting or some forest exploring, I will be able to provide you the information if needed. So I do thank you all for watching this. It's probably a weird time to be able to do an episode like this, especially after 40 plus episodes of doing Township already. You'd think I would know this by now, but there's still some things that you can learn if you haven't seen it already. So with that being said, I do hope you mates will go check some other stuff out. I do have some other episodes that will be coming soon, and it will be showing up here in the outro real soon. And yeah, so thank you all for watching. Hope this was helpful. Hope you have a wonderful day, and goodbye.